Welcome to CyberMAYnia, cyber talks with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Discussing risks, AI, emerging threats, workforce challenges, and more. With your host, May Brooks.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of CyberMAYnia. With me today, the amazing Jim West. Jim, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing, May?
I'm pretty good, getting ready for the weekend. Very excited about that because I really need the weekend this week.
And don't we all?
I think so, but this week specifically. Amazing. So as we always start this podcast with you telling us a little bit about you, yourself, and your crazy journey around cybersecurity.
Well, I've been doing this work for 32 years, so all this gray and white from lots of long nights and weekends and just lots of overtime hours throughout those decades. I was in cybersecurity from like the early 90s, back when it was 386, 46 processor computers, back when we still had 5.25-inch floppy disk and then the 3.5-inch disk. From back then and seeing all of the advancements in emerging technologies that became standardized technologies to today, we have now, AI and generative models, language NLPs, etc., and then cryptocurrency and cryptography is now in threat and risk to be updated with quantum computing. So we have all this, what I call disruptive technologies, that every year or 2 years we had another disruptive technology changing industries for the better, for the most part. So, I've created a company called TopCyberPro.com during COVID. I won't go into the long story, but the essential was I wanted an affordable way for people to get cybersecurity training that didn't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. And within like 1 month, 2 months, they can get their certifications and then pursue their careers and get their careers started. That's it in a nutshell.
That's amazing. Well, you've been doing so many things around this industry, and to be honest, you just tapped on a couple. So I want to ask you a little bit about your experience, as you've been a subject matter expert in so many different domains and projects and frameworks throughout the years. And you've mastered different skills, and you talk a lot about mastering skills and being in diverse areas. And I think that's one of the things that is really relevant in this industry, because there are so many different roles and skill sets required. So I want to ask you a little bit about your background and how getting those different perspectives change your approach in cybersecurity.
That's a great question, actually. You hear the term SME, subject matter expert. That means you're an expert within one facet of the cybersecurity industry. And there's so many bodies of knowledge. There's so much information. It's almost like an ocean of information. And so the way I look at it is, by being a multi-domain expert, is you take expertise in like biometric security, digital forensics, penetration testing, auditing, governance, and all of these different facets. And then you mentioned defense frameworks. There's security frameworks, defense and depth frameworks. And I kind of view it, have you ever seen that movie Predator with the alien that's hunting people? It's got the helmet. And it has, when they show the point of view of the predator, it could change its vision. It could go from infrared to heat vision. It has all these different visions and I guess lenses it can put on. And that's kind of how I look at being knowledgeable in these different defense frameworks, is that it gives you another lens to look at your network, your information security, and the different facets of your organization's security plan. It gives you another lens. And then as far as not bodies of knowledge and getting expertise in different domains within cybersecurity, I look at that as like having a microscope or a telescope, depending on what you're doing for the business. So, for example, if you concentrate your knowledge into a very particular field, let's say like ISC Square has 3 concentrations: the management, the architecture, and the engineering certification. And these concentrations hone your knowledge deep down into that sector, right? And so that's kind of like a microscope. You're looking at security within that particular sector with a microscope. Whereas when you do certifications like CISP or CISM or some of the more manager or what we call the inch deep, mile wide, that's looking at security through like the lens of a telescope, right? Where you can see a little bit further than the average person can see. So that's kind of looking, it's like microscopes and telescopes, and it's giving you visions both microscopic to looking at the bigger picture.
Absolutely love that analogy with the microscope and telescope. I'm going to steal that. I'm already saying I'm definitely going to steal that because I absolutely love it. And I think one of the things that really resonated with one of our conversations before is you told me that you worked in various regions around the world. And I think that also helps change perspectives for professionals because we know that there are very different threat actors and risks and things associated with different parts of the world. So I want to ask you a little bit, and if you can share a little bit about your background because you've been all over the place.
Yeah.
How does local culture and local talent, things like that, impact your approach to, I think, probably mostly risk management and how you implement cybersecurity in different regions around the world?
Wonderful. Another great question, actually. I've been to 91 countries around the world, and when you go from different regions, which they have their local customs, their different regions have different predominant religions and cultural practices. And one of the things I love about traveling is immersing myself within that culture, learning the like the back alley streets and the favorite restaurants for the locals, not just the tourist trodden spots. But immersing yourself. And that's the same approach I take to like with emerging technology, like with generative AI. As soon as you hear it, it's become a hot buzzword. Instead of being on the sidelines as a security professional, it's incumbent upon me to learn these new technologies, to become at least somewhat acquainted so that when my leadership comes to me and says, Jim, should we start investing in exploring options into this space? I can give them an informed answer and recommendation. And so going back to the being in cultures and regions, you learn about being more sensitive to different perspectives and worldviews because not everything, just because Hollywood, New York is always a city that the aliens come attack and that everything happens in New York. There is a global stage and there's multiple cities in the world. There's multiple perspectives. And I think having the empathy to one, be patient enough to immerse yourself and have an open mind because you're going to learn something. Everywhere you go, you'll learn something from the people, from the region, and it grows you internally and spiritually and as well. And it opens up your mind to seeing things with a better perspective, a broader perspective.
Absolutely love that. And I can completely relate. I think one of the advantages of being right now, I'm in the UAE. I think one of the advantages here is that I think this place is the backbone of the term global village because you have people here from all over the world.
Everywhere,
Yeah,
everywhere.
I was working here for a company and we were only something like 120 people when I joined from about 40 different nationalities. And that's incredible because suddenly you learn about Diwali, the Indian light festival. And then, as someone who comes from a Jewish background, I was like, wait a minute, that sounds very much like Hanukkah. And then I learned about Hajj Bilayla. And I said, wait a minute, that reminds me of the story of Purim. So you learn a lot about culture and and people coming from different backgrounds. And at the end of the day, it is a village. But I agree. I think that there is a lot of things, first, to learn from other cultures, and second, to understand about the different approach to risk. And you mentioned new technologies erupting, and you mentioned Gen AI, but today I decided not to talk about Gen AI because we always talk about Gen AI. I think for the last 2 years, well, maybe not 2 years, a year and a half, every conversation I have at some point pivots towards AI. So I want to ask you about something else. I
Yes.
know you've been talking a lot and researching a lot of technologies in general, and you're a cryptography expert. We know that. And I want to talk to you a little bit about cryptography and how it's going to evolve and change with the rise of quantum computers. Now we know quantum computing is not a new idea. Just like Gen AI, people think that Gen AI was invented in 2022. No, we've been talking about Gen AI, AI in general, machine learning. I mean, I would say 25 years easily,
Mhm.
probably more.
Yep.
And quantum computing is the same. It's not something new. But I think that the maturity of these technologies, both of them, is getting to a point that it is a day to day, almost day to day technology. People are using it and they will start using computing more and more. I want to ask you, from a cryptography perspective, how will it evolve this industry?
So I actually been presenting globally at many conferences a presentation called "The Real Threat of Quantum Computing," and so I talk about a lot of the threats that's going to face everyone in every organization with the soon to be oncoming and disruption of quantum computers once they enter into the commercial and defense spaces. Just kind of give a real quick explanation. A lot of folks hear about quantum and quantum physics, and it used to be, about 25 plus years ago was theory, and now those theories are becoming real life systems that are being run at very negative 1,000 degree plus cold temperatures to operate in. So it's a very intensive process to get these systems to operate in. But what we're seeing is they're able, as more testing and more research is advancing, is they're able to have conditions where you don't have to have a lot of super cold facilities. There's been people that do practical desktop type of applications for this. So what a lot of people in industry believe is that within the next 2 to 3 years, we'll start seeing like other large corporations start having they're developing their own quantum computing platforms in their business. But in regards to cryptography, one of the greatest threats to understand the qubits, which are the building blocks of a quantum computer. Every qubit you add, and I'll just keep it really simple for the people listening, instead of going into the exponential math of it, basically think of, when you hear about cryptography and you hear about brute force attacks and cracking algorithms, it's usually based upon a key space, like how many possibilities of keys are in that crypto algorithm's key space. And the rule of thumb is if a system within a reasonable amount of time, would be the term I use, can crack through half that key space, that's now a coin flip of guessing that particular session's key and potentially being able to compromise it. So with that simple definition being said, what each qubit does is essentially ballpark, it's 300 years of classical compute time that each qubit. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago, IBM was maybe 30, 40 qubits a line, to most recently they announced they had over 1,000 qubits a line. And they have plans to scale up to 10,000 qubits as well as 100,000 qubits. So each qubit, think of it as 300 years of classical compute time getting knocked off of breaking codes or breaking algorithms. So the one algorithm that I tell people that they should be most concerned with, because there is 3 new algorithms. So actually a week ago, NIST published the FIPS 203, 204, 205, which Kyber, they've kind of got their own names for, but Kyber being the one that's most attacked by industry because of the proposed breaches of side channel attacks on it. But aside from getting into that discussion, they do have 3, and they're anticipating more being added in the coming years. But the one that's still on the list, that's the most used algorithm in the world, is AES 256.
Yeah.
And we use that for e-commerce. We use that for email. Anything that has to go from, one key to a, PKI infrastructure systems are based on AES 256. So long story short, this is still in that post-quantum resistant list that they have with NIST. And the concern is that if a quantum supercomputer, which is the term I've been using for a while, but no one in industry has determined what the number of
What it
qubits,
is.
what that is yet. No one is willing to go out on the limb and be the first one to be crucified by industry and all other mathematicians and physicists in the world. But at some point, someone's going to make that jump and say, this many qubits will now separate regular quantum computers from super. And some people speculate, say that's going to be somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 qubits, but to be determined. But when that metric is set, the concern is that a quantum supercomputer, which will give a nation state a quantum supremacy, there's a doomsday theory called Q-Day, where they would have the capability to disrupt financial markets, to actually disrupt blockchains, which is what cryptocurrencies are based on and the fintech industry is based on. It would be able to cause widespread manipulation. So that's kind of the scary idea of it. But when I advocate to both businesses and government is that trade secrets, confidential information, as well as patents, and for government, it would be like classified and top secret information that was sent in ciphertext that was intercepted by anybody would then be compromised to be defeated and then made into clear text. So this could cause disruptions in geopolitical space. Partnerships, NATO, United Nations, all these things could be put at risk given what information is gleaned from ciphertext. So not going down too far down a rabbit hole, yes, cryptography, NIST is working really hard with other agencies to provide the world and industries the way ahead. But what I fear is that we may not have the adoption rate, might not be as fast as that should happen, because it will be expensive to switch over to these systems. So what I fear is that we'll have a lot of businesses that won't adopt in time, and then we'll have to look at other measures. But not to leave everybody scared and going back to their businesses going, the sky is falling. Jim West has said the sky is falling. I would encourage anyone that this is feeling like they're threatened by it is to look into things like zero trust architecture is not really new. It's the new buzzword for network security defense. But essentially, there was a thing just a few years ago called IAM or IDAM, Identity Authentication Management, where it increased the authentication factors and integrity factors. And what they did is they've added stronger network segmentation with a little bit more crypto. And so what they've done is essentially took what's a program by the NSA called Commercial Solutions for Classified, and they did just one layer of encrypt instead of the two with extra CM monitoring points. And that's essentially zero trust architecture. In fact, they were doing zero trust architecture before zero
Without
trust.
calling it that.
Yeah, but that information you could just Google NSA CSFC Commercial Solution for Classified. It's all public information. It is a little bit complex when you try to implement those type of solutions. So if you are an organization that's looking at it as an approach, I would probably recommend that you have a conversation with a cloud provider like Microsoft, Google. All of them have a strategy for zero trust architecture, and at least get informed and educated about it. But the bottom line is you may have to adopt a second layer of independent encryption so that you will have an opportunity to recognize the quantum attack as it's hitting your network and be able to have the new modern version of a honeynet or a La Brea tar pit, as they used to be called in the 90s and 80s, in your network to slow down that traffic or realize it's a quantum attack and be able to segment away or to possibly offline your data. So, and then AI will have expert AI systems that also help with real-time response as well. So I believe that other emerging technologies will be developed to help combat and support businesses. But at the end of the day, everyone should at least be read up on what NIST is doing in the post-quantum cryptography space, sign up for alerts and updates, and just be in the know.
I love that. And to be honest, we could probably talk only about that for at least 2-3 hours. One of the things that I've been thinking about in probably the last 2 years, I mean, we've been talking about AI and quantum computing for so long. And personally, I was surprised by the Gen AI boom. I mean, it went from 0 to 1,000 within probably a few months. When people started talking about ChatGPT and everything, and I started talking about it at work and with colleagues, they were looking at me like, yeah, it's not a thing. And I think now, and what is it, about 2 years since ChatGPT really started buzzing?
Mm-hmm.
I think less than 2 years. It was the end of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed in which it became a commodity
Yep.
is crazy. And you mentioned, will organizations be able to actually adapt and implement those? Because we know how to deal with quantum computing and the challenges we'll have to face. But the implementation, I wonder, will quantum computing be like that? Will it be sort of a boom? We'll get to that point and that's it. Now in theory, everyone has a quantum computer. I don't know, to be honest. I've been contemplating that for a while now. Will it be that clear cut that I can say Q4 2022 was the pivoting period for Gen AI? I wonder, will it be the same for quantum computer? I don't know.
I'll add a little factoid for you. So, an ex-Google exec has a YouTube video out there, and several clips of it out there on YouTube as well. Mo Godot, that spoke about the intelligence IQ of ChatGPT. Have you seen this clip?
No.
So he's an ex-Google exec, and so there's in the industry, some people are kind of like, well, you can't really equivocally rate the IQ of an AI system. But Mo goes on the record to say that, and this was like, I think, several months ago now, he, on YouTube, on public record, said that the ChatGPT at the time, I think it was 4, has the IQ equivalent of 155. Now, to put that in perspective for folks that don't understand the Mensa scale, Albert Einstein, so when people say who's the greatest genius of all time, 9 out of 10 people will easily say Einstein. Einstein was estimated to be between 160 and 190. So most of the world agrees 160, 100%, but a lot of people say he went up to 190. So regardless of where you feel he was in the world, 155 is 5 points
pretty
away
dang good
from Einstein. And so Mo went further to speculate that in the next 10 years, AI will be over 1,000 IQ points. I forget the official number he said, but it was going to be
Well,
over. It doesn't register anymore on the human scale. Now, with that being said, if he is right, which there's no doubt that it could not be right because there's been issues, publicly reported issues where AIs have started developing their own code that's not based on any language we have, developing their own languages to communicate in. So that shows a type of intelligence that exceeds human intelligence. So if you imagine if you took all the history, all the science papers, all the journals, all the engineering information of the whole world, and you put it into a system, it will have all of human knowledge and it would exceed that already. And then you take it 10 years down the road, who is to say he's not right? That at anywhere from 200 plus, that the AI systems will become smarter than humanity.
the question is, will they become creative like humanity? And
Sentience.
I think that's one of the biggest questions when we're talking about AI. And I'm a big advocate for AI. I use it each and every single
Oh, yeah.
day.
I love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. I think it saves us a lot of time. It helps me create content much faster. It's great, but it has its disadvantages. And at the end of the day, it's not creative. It doesn't invent something new. Now, but honestly, if we're talking about humanity, how many times have we seen something completely new? Like, and I had that conversation with a friend of mine. He's an author, and he told me something that actually really resonated with me. All the books in the world have already been written, and every new book is based on one of those other books.
Yep.
And sometimes you
William
will,
Shakespeare.
yeah,
Yeah, William Shakespeare said there's 27 to 28 story tropes that every story will follow, or a
yeah.
combination thereof. So your friend is absolutely right. It's very closely related. Two gentlemen, years ago when there was all these sound music song lawsuits about sampling from this song to that song. These two guys, I forget their names, but they can be found on the internet quickly. But they brilliantly put out a thing that produced every sound possible on the sound spectrum, and they put out this song, and therefore they were able to lay claim to any music that will ever be created because
Well,
they have done it.
well,
And
you know Suno probably. And one of my friends is really into generating songs via Suno. And he really turned it into an art. He really did. And he manages to create tracks that are absolutely phenomenal in every genre you can imagine, from hip hop to a cappella to classical
nice.
music. Now, I was trained in music. I was born to a very musical family. My grandmother was a violinist and an opera singer. I know music. I played the piano since I was 7 or 8 years old. I play It's not the only instrument, but that's my main one. Some of those songs, I'm like, oh my God, I will never open the piano again. There's no point. I will never get to that level. So it's sometimes frustrating, but we're completely pivoting away from cybersecurity. So let's go back to cybersecurity. And I think there are a lot of challenges. I think today there are so many challenges around cybersecurity, and it's not just about emerging threats. And I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I I'm personally very concerned with. I think most of the industry is, and that's the workforce gap. And you did mention that you think that AI will replace some of those, will help us tackle some of those challenges, and I completely agree. I think that a lot of the repetitive jobs that are being done today will be done better by AI tools, definitely. The question is how will grow, let's call it tier two professionals if they've never been tier ones. But that's a different question. But you've been such a strong advocate in this industry, and you supported, I don't even know how many tens of thousands of professionals both get into this field and also grow their careers through your education programs and certification programs and everything that you do with the masterminds and Top Cyber Pro and other initiatives. I want to ask you, what actually inspired you to start helping people build their career? Was there some sort of strategy, or did you just fall into it?
It just came, it would be colleagues and work colleagues in a situation where they needed a certification, either to retain their job or to get that promotion they've been waiting for a long time. And so it just started out from helping just my work colleagues and friends, and then it just grew from there. Then word of mouth, because people would be like, "Oh, you're struggling with this? Yeah, let me introduce you to Jim." And it started kind of like local through my local network. And then I reached a point, I won't go into a long story, but I had an issue with GAIAC and SANS over a certification where I helped 60 students in 30 days. They all passed this certification. They flagged it for an audit, and they even revoked. I had 5 GAIAC certifications and revoked that particular one, the security leadership. And so what had happened was they'd questioned all these 60 people that took it all across Europe, and they all said the same thing. Well, Jim West coached and mentored me for the certification. So what they did was they flagged it as a testing anomaly, and then they revoked my GSLC, and I got the same email the same day as everybody else that I would be given a new voucher to retake it in 4 months or something like this. Of course, I ended up speaking to Mr. Jeffrey Frisk, who was the technical director of GAIAC at the time. And he repeated the same thing that the previous 2 people on the phone said, that was testing anomalies. And then on the call, as I'm listening to this, it like a lightning bolt hits me what the testing anomaly was. And what it was when you have 60 people pass the certification all in this continent, and I'm the common denominator, they're thinking somehow that from 8 years prior, I had a photorealistic memory, memorized their entire test bank, which I would assume is at least 600 to 800 questions, which when you take a test is only 150 questions. But anyhow, I'm thinking they're alleging that somehow I've remembered my 150 questions and I'm just test dumping to these people. But then it hit me, a testing anomaly is not the right answer. If everybody's getting the same right answers, it's a right answer is a right answer. The anomaly is that they were using my same methods. I was coaching them to break down the questions. They were also answering the same wrong answers. So 60 people answering, let's say 6 to 7 questions the same way wrong, that is definitely an anomaly. But what it was it wasn't that I was doing anything unethical. I actually found a way to break down a question with a CIA method and to get the answer. But the bottom line was, back to the original question, was it that inspired me to say, you know what? Now that I helped a group of 60 people, why don't I publish these methods and test tips? And so I think it was 2014, I published these to the world, and now I'm helping everybody without me directly having to coach and get on a phone call because I'm only one person. But an ebook can, be shared and exponentially. So now I'm able to help many more people.
Beautiful. You talk a lot about certifications, and there are a lot of debates in this industry of certifications the right way to go. Do you need a degree? People don't have certifications and they have a lot of knowledge, and I'm not knocking it. I want to ask you about your perspective. Why do you still believe that certifications today are critical in the cybersecurity landscape? And if so, why? And if not, why?
I'm a big proponent of having a mixture of some hands-on experience for certain roles as well as certifications. Degrees, my perspective on degrees is that it's more so for the management directors and the C-suite. Obviously, there's value in having writing skills and being able to convey ideas and information in a clear, articulate way. And that is something that formal training that you get that you won't get from a certification. A certification's goal is to kind of benchmark your awareness of a body of knowledge within a particular scope of cybersecurity. So whether it's a CISSP or like a penetration testing cert or any kind of like cyber analyst with CYSA with CompTIA or Security Plus, it's to test both a level based upon relative experience and a scope of what those job roles with that cert would be. And so I believe it's a good measure and benchmark for that. Because, would I advocate for a SOC analyst to go to a 4-year university to be a SOC analyst? No, I would say that if you're a hiring manager and you're building a SOC team, you should maybe require maybe a baseline acceptable list of certifications and then look at their practical hands-on experience. Those are the factors that, because you need more hands on a keyboard than theory when it comes to running operations in a SOC. Whereas if you're doing compliance risk management, like doing like RMF paperwork or accreditation type of paperwork where it's a lot of documentation, then the skill set you really need is someone that's very detailed oriented, and that's not going to be measured in a cert and not always measurable by a degree. So again, I think the human element of measuring people's emotional intelligence is an important hiring factor. But back to your question of certifications, I think it's good for about 80, a solid 80% of the industry is, I think, more than served well by certifications. And I think there's another 20% that would be served better with, a mix of direct experience and then, even smaller of that 20% by a degree.
Fantastic. Well, I a lot of people ask me, why do you advocate for certifications? And I tell them, look, guys, at the end of the day, it's getting your foot in the door. I'm not saying that in for many people, and I think myself included, when I did my CISSP, I was actually I was a little bit disappointed by it because originally when I signed up to take the CISSP, I said, "Oh, that's great. That will take me to the next level in my professional journey, and I will learn new things." And then when I was learning, I was like, "Wait a minute. I know most of this. Like, I think I probably knew about 90%." And then I realized that's sort of the point of certification. Certification means that someone else gave you that stamp of approval, said, May knows her stuff in this
Hmm.
domain. And I think that's the point of certifications. Now, at the end of the day, people tell me, but I know it. Why do I need this certification? Because you need to get your foot in the door. And when an HR executive is looking through dozens and dozens of CVs that they get per open position, they don't have the time to talk to Jim and find out, oh, he actually knows his stuff. They need someone else to tell them, Jim knows his stuff. It's fine. So that's sort of my perspective. And I'm not knocking certifications. I've been teaching certifications and I have certifications. But I think at the end of the day, people should understand it's a way to prove that, yes, you can study for the CISSP or any other certification. You can take the book and you can study and you'll know your stuff. But no one else will know that you know your stuff. And personally, I wouldn't go to a doctor who'll tell me, don't worry about it. I saw all the episodes of Grey's Anatomy. No, not really. I want them to be certified. So I want my professionals to be certified as well. Um,
Well, May, before you
yeah.
move on, I just one more thing to add to that. If there are hiring managers, program managers, people that are in hiring authority positions, and HR personnel, I wholly recommend at least opening up the language when you think about a pyramid of like positions. Like if you're looking for like someone with 10 plus years experience, you need a SME. Obviously, go for very scrutinized criteria requirements. But when you're just hiring for your service desk, help desk, your entry level positions, we see the memes all the time. We need a college degree plus 10 years experience for service desk.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And so I always advocate to people that are writing these job descriptions, the lower on the pyramid that position is in, open up your job pool candidacy. Do experience and or certifications and or degree so that you open your talent pool up, because it's always better to bring someone in and give them that shot to grow with your organization, learn your organization. I tell you, you'll have a much longer retention period with that employee than if you try to bring in that 10-year with a degree and certifications like Rockstar or Unicorn, because of the service test. Why is someone with 10 years experience at the service test still? But you're going to try to hire rock stars. And I'll be honest with you, rock stars, like folks like me, the moment someone's going to pay me another $50,000 a year, I'm going to turn in my 2 to 4 weeks notice. And that's how industry is. It's very competitive at certain levels with certain industries in our career field. But yeah, I would definitely advocate for entry level positions. Businesses need to do the or,
Yeah.
and
Instead
give
of
an
end, end,
opportunity.
end.
Yes.
Exactly. I agree. I think that one of the things that sort of differentiates people that manage to find those early stage positions and grow in this industry is, and I'm sorry to say, is networking and building their personal brands. And you've received many awards and recognitions throughout the years. I want to ask you, what do you think key, the keys for your success in this industry? How much time do you actually spend on building that brand?
I think over 32 years, I think the key thing is just the human element of security, right? It takes people to make decisions. It takes people to do the work, the analysis, writing the reports, doing the recommendations. And throughout 32 years, working with different teams, different organizations, because, someone that might be an analyst today 3, 5 years from now, he might be the director of cybersecurity for another organization. And then, life has a way of everything circling back around, right? Someone you might have mentored years ago is now in a director level position today. And for me, I love when I see people grow their careers and become successful. I don't look at it as a competition. I've done podcasts with other people that do cyber education, and the thing is we need more of it. There's no competition with one CISP class versus another. Everybody has value to bring to the world, and if I can correlate information to someone that makes it easy for them to wrap their heads around and get it and go past a cert, great. But if May can do it, wonderful. If Keith Wilson, there's so many people out there, but like if oh my goodness, my brain's drawing a blank. But Professor Messer, he's wonderful on the YouTube channel for Security Plus. Professor Messer, he has helped hundreds of thousands of people get their certification. So whatever avenue, whatever mentor, teacher you learn from, as long as you can learn from them, it's an ocean out there, and I think there's more room for more of us and more people to rise up to be experts and to give back to this industry.
That I think most people who do cyber education, like yourself, like me, like Professor Messer, I've interviewed so many over the years in this podcast and other opportunities. I think the same sort of connecting line I can see between all of them. We're all passionate about this industry. We all believe in this industry, and we all think that this industry can change people's lives. I think that's sort of the point. So I mentioned, and you sort of hinted to that direction, talking about personal brand and building careers and things like that. And I want to ask you about your number one advice that you would give someone either just starting out or in early stages in their career looking to get to the next level. What sort of advice would you give them around that?
A lot of conversations I'll have with people that are considering cyber, they'll say, well, I'm not that technical, or I'm already 50 something or 60 something years old. I don't know if I could do this. And I say it's simple. If you could read and you can comprehend, you could do cybersecurity. And of course, everybody can read and comprehend. But the perspective I think it takes to really be successful, though, is be a sponge. Even when you accumulate so many certs or degrees and knowledge and you've got some experience in your belt, maybe you spoke at a couple conferences and so now you're a subject matter expert. Even as an expert, what I realize is the term I like to really use, and I probably should use it on my LinkedIn profile, but the term I've always said to my colleagues is I'm not, even though I'm a multi-domain expert, I truly, inside of myself and my perspective internally is I'm a perpetual student. There's something new to learn every day. Once you think you learned everything today, even if you learned everything in cybersecurity that you could possibly know today, by tomorrow or by Sunday, there's going to be so many more advancements, so many new applications, so many new vulnerabilities, new threats, and even new technologies that are going to come out that you still will ever be learning. So if you could just always look at it as, yes, you may get your 1, 2 certs, get a degree, get your foot in the door, get 3, 5 years experience, get promoted, move up and up and up. But never forget, you should always be a perpetual student. Always be educating yourself, doing your CPEs. If your company is exploring a new technology, and throw yourself into it, immerse yourself into it. There's going to be free courses on that technology. Take the free courses and then research a couple paid courses. Use Reddit subreddits. Look at other experts in the field that are talking about that technology or those solutions, and just immerse yourself in it and be a perpetual student.
That is absolutely brilliant. I couldn't agree more. Paraphrasing Charlie Chaplin, a day without learning is a day wasted. And I'm a very big advocate for lifelong learning. And to be honest, I think it doesn't matter what you learn. For me, one of the things that I made it a habit, and I've been keeping this habit every single day for over 4 years, over 1,750 something days. I've been learning new languages with Duolingo. And that's the way I start my morning. I wake up, brush my teeth, take 10 minutes to practice my French or Arabic or Spanish or whatever I'm learning at that point in time. And then I know that it's 8 o'clock in the morning, but I already learned something new. And I
Wow,
think that's
I
a
like
great,
that.
thank you. I love that habit. And it's not just cybersecurity. Sometimes you learn something that has nothing to do with cybersecurity and really enriches you personally and professionally. So I'm a big advocate for lifelong learning. But you know what? It really resonates with me. I want to ask you, what would you consider today the most valuable skill or mindset for success in this industry?
I think it's two things. I think it's what I just said, being a perpetual
Learning.
student, being a lifelong learner, perpetual student, learning, constantly being a state of learning. And I love that you brought up learning new languages because, like you said, it doesn't have to always be IT, cyber, tech, tech, tech. You can learn to play an instrument. You can learn because all of these things actually they're connected somehow, right? I'm also an author, so in a book series I wrote that's to inspire kids, mostly girls, into STEM. My mathematicians or my wizards in my fantasy story were like Archimedes, Pythagoras, and so forth. And in my second book, I had one of my champions, one of my major fans. This kid suggested that music is math, which as a student of music yourself and being in a musical family, you have the rhythm, the timing, the frequencies of sound. All of this is mathematics, and so when he mentioned it to us, I loved it. So I actually tied that into geometry and I used it as a song that these kids in the story sang. That was a crucial element of one of my books in my series. And I remember I had the Keith Devlin, who was the Stanford math chair, when he heard about my series and got a hold of one of the books, said that it was brilliant and that he wished he had the talent to write such a thing. And to me, he's a god to me as far as a mathematician because he's one of the top mathematicians on the planet. He actually was on the science team that resurrected the Pamphilus, which is Archimedes' writings and equations. So he's a brilliant man. But yeah, I think the perspective people should have is always be humble to know that you can be a SME, you can have all this knowledge, but sometimes, our pride can get the better of us, especially when we start getting, negative and, it's easy to be like, oh, these executives don't know what they're doing. They're idiots. They're going to just, we're going to get hacked, breached. We have to remember that we're in a service industry. We are serving at the service of the executives, of the managers, of the stakeholders of the company, and we do our best to provide the right guidance and knowledge that we can impart to them. And by being a perpetual student, being as informed as possible that we can be, so that we can translate that into a language that they can understand, so they can make the best decisions from a business perspective. But I think we had this conversation on my podcast about how cybersecurity professionals need to have a little bit more understanding of the business side of operations, as well as the business and stakeholders need to have a little bit more understanding of cyber. And I think we can come and meet in the middle. I loved your approach, that idea that you had about that. And I think more people should take that guidance.
People will have to listen to your podcast. We're not going to tell them everything. See, cross-pollination. Amazing. See. So, Jim, before we wrap this up with the pop quiz that you didn't know about, maybe.
Okay.
You do so much work in this field. And I want to give our audience a chance to connect with you. So what's the best way to connect with you, to follow you, to see what you're doing?
Well, the best way, obviously, LinkedIn is the network for professionals, the social media network for professionals. So LinkedIn is the most easiest way. But if someone's just watching saying, I'm not going to, go on LinkedIn, just Google Jim West Cyber, Jim West author. I'm an award-winning, best-selling author, and I'm also an award-winning cybersecurity expert. So if you just do Jim West author, Jim West Cyber, you'll find enough links about me there. But
and you'll send the link, and I'll put it here in the description.
So LinkedIn would be the best way to connect to me.
Amazing. Fantastic. So before we wrap this up, I always love asking these very quick pop quiz questions.
Okay.
Whatever comes to mind, no right or wrong answers.
Got it.
So let's get started with, you said you've been to 91 countries. So what's the most unexpected place your cybersecurity journey took you to?
Ooh, so for cybersecurity purposes, I got to go to a place in Nevada that's referred to as the NTTR. So I can't speak much about what I saw there, but it was a really cool experience. It's the closest you would get to going to somewhere like Area 51, but more public information available about that acronym than Area 51. But from a cybersecurity perspective, and then there was another location, I can't say where it was, but I stepped into a facility that was technically not on that country's sovereign soil for legal and national security reasons. So that was another interesting story that I can't speak about, but just that alone,
It was
at
cool.
least people are like that. That's different.
Yeah, amazing. Set best best-selling author, best-selling speaker, and other achievements. So how do you celebrate your achievements?
You know, it's kind of different with like when I write a book, for example. I'm actually releasing a book in another week or two called The Art of War in Cybersecurity. And every time I
Oh,
hold the proof copy when they arrive in the mail and I hold that book, it's really like holding a baby. Every book
yes.
is like a baby. But as far as the celebration, I keep it really low key. I might go have dinner with my fiance. We'll go celebrate with a dinner somewhere. But it's just a low key celebration because every book I put out is to help people have a new perspective, learn something, and like I said earlier, have that different lens to see security through.
Beautiful. If you hadn't chosen a career in tech, what would you be doing today?
If I didn't do tech, oh goodness. So it was weird. I actually originally wanted to be a history teacher because I'd always been a lover of history. I like to look at history as, the most common thing is history always repeats itself. And there's certain facets of history that reverberate over and over again through time, right? We see things like the humanity and brutality of war and conflict. And we've seen how divisions of group of people, whether it's mostly done through religion, culture, or some kind of pivotal difference that pits people against each other to resort to violent tendencies. We see that in the United States politics, right? We've seen that with the January 6 riots and so forth. So being a fan and student of history, it kind of to have lessons learned, like when we have an incident in cybersecurity, we like to analyze what happened, how did it happen, and come up with lessons learned so we can be better so that it won't happen again. And it's funny how we don't seem to apply it. We do that in cybersecurity, but we don't seem to do that in our context of our governments and our lives to really take those lessons learned and apply them. And I know some people try. And I think as long as people are trying to be better and grow and educate themselves daily and become what I call the best version of yourself, that's the best we can hope for. And I guess the key then is just always have hope. If history has taught us anything, it's always have hope.
Yeah, probably. Love that. Um, is there a specific book that really impacted your career or life and you can recommend?
Well, as a child, there was a book called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne.
Oh, I love that book.
I've read that book so many times when I was a young man, young child. But the series that really took a hold of me, that really opened my imagination up, was a book by Lloyd Alexander called The Chronicles of Prydain. I hope I'm saying the last word right. But the author based the mythology in the book and a lot of stories on Welsh mythology, and I absolutely love it. There was great Welsh mythology interwoven in the series. His last book, The High King, it's a four-book series, but the last book, The High King, won the Newbery Award. And so he's a wonderful author. Well, he's deceased now, but I highly recommend him to my friends that have like what I say preteen kids. I think it's more appropriate for any kids from like fourth grade to about maybe seventh grade as the grade range that I would recommend this book for. But it's a brilliant series. It's got a lot of great themes, life lessons and themes in it. And so with my book series for fantasy series, I try to do the same thing by introducing ancient Greek mathematicians and life lessons and teaching kids to be inspired to stick with mathematics because it's just another way of talking.
Beautiful. Last but not least, what's your number one tip to staying motivated?
Number one tip to stay motivated. Be able to let go of the negativity because in life you're going to have negativity hit you, whether it's from boss, leadership, work colleagues, people you're trying to help. I used to get in my 30s, I used to get so frustrated where I'd be trying to help someone, coach and mentor them, and then they would just go off and do something else, or they would just completely drop their motivation would go away. And then when I'd follow up a week or two later, like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna do that anymore. And I would take it personal. I would get so disheartened, like, but we had so
But
much.
we,
We had so much inspiration and motivation, and that's the thing, inspiration and motivation is a spark. It's the spark. But you have to be willing to accept the fact that when it comes to external factors that you do not control, it's really the serenity prayer, actually, now that I think about it, is recognize the
yeah,
things that you can control and the things you cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that comes in just ages and years, with the white hairs on my face, I've had to learn, sometimes the hard way to let things go, make problems and toxicity in life, like water off a duck's back, and know that it's not always personal, because I mentioned maybe earlier about emotional intelligence and patience and empathy. You never know what that other person's going through. That senior leadership, there's a ton of pressure that they're under to deliver services, to meet certain metrics and quantitative numbers that they have to meet for their boards and the people to keep their jobs going. And sometimes when they're taking it, sometimes as cybersecurity people, we're the lightning rods for some of this negativity. But to remember to not take it personal, and to be better informed, so that when the moment comes where we're called upon to be the person with the answer, we're that person with the answer. We actually help enable them to be better executives and better managers.
That's beautiful. Jim, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an absolute pleasure having you here. And we will link here below all the links to your books and your podcast and your everything. So you'll send me all the links and we'll put them here in the bio. And thank you so much for joining me. And for those watching, don't forget to subscribe, and see you here next time on Mania.
All right. Bye.